After a legendary college season at Memphis University, Derrick Rose really showed that he was one of the best players in the country, and he truly showed his elite basketball skills, speed, and athleticism. And because of this, he was drafted as the number one pick for the Chicago Bulls in the 2008 NBA draft. And this was a significant moment because Derrick Rose, he grew up in Chicago. He was a Chicago native. He was born there, he grew up there, and was raised there. And now he was able to represent Chicago in the NBA and play at the highest level. And he was living out every kid's dream in Chicago, and he became an icon within the city. And the introduction of Derrick Rose to the city of Chicago, it really brought a new lease of life to the city. Because obviously, Chicago, they had the great Michael Jordan. With the Chicago Bulls, he achieved 6 championships. He was the icon of the NBA, the face, the greatest NBA player of all time at that particular point, and he really was the symbol of Chicago. But after Michael Jordan left, the Chicago Bulls really entered an era of mediocrity. They really weren't playing well, and there wasn't too much to look forward to in the city of Chicago. And for Chicago, that must have been such a big shock because they were on the top of the world. They were winning championship after championship. They had the greatest basketball player in the world, arguably the most famous person in the world, and all of a sudden they're back to mediocrity. That must have been a shock. So the introduction of Derrick Rose to the city, it must have been a major relief for Chicago fans, and it definitely was. In his rookie season, Derrick Rose did not disappoint whatsoever. He averaged around 16.8 points per game and 6.3 assists. But if you looked at his play style, he was explosive, he was lightning quick, he was athletic. I mean, the guy had it all. And in terms of his feel for the game, it was second to none. He was able to get downhill at ease and create easy and open looks for his teammates and make his teammates better. But this was a point guard of a profile that we really never saw before. The way he would aggressively attack the lane, it was complete violence. And if you stayed under the rim when he was attacking the rim, it was game over. I mean, that's how creative he was as a finisher. That's how aggressive and violent and powerful he was as a finisher. And this was one of the most exciting point guards in the league, even in his rookie season. And this is the reason why Derrick Rose won the Rookie of the Year award. And he was one of the main guys who led the Chicago Bulls to a playoff position where they faced the Boston Celtics in the first round of the 2009 playoffs. And Derrick Rose, he made a great account for himself because in the first game of those 2009 playoffs, in game one against the Boston Celtics, Derrick Rose dropped 36 points and 11 assists. I repeat, as a rookie in the first game in the playoffs, Derrick Rose dropped 36 and 11 assists. The only other rookie who dropped 36 points on their playoff debut was Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. That's the type of company that Derrick Rose was in. And Derrick Rose in this series, he averaged around 20 points per game. 20 points in your first playoff series. I mean, that is remarkable. And this wasn't just against anybody. This was against the super team Boston Celtics, who had Ray Allen and Paul Pierce. Unfortunately, Kevin Garnett couldn't play due to injury, but it was still a very good Boston Celtics side who were considered a really good team. And Derrick Rose and the Chicago Bulls pushed them all the way to 7 games. And we also have to remember, the Chicago Bulls also didn't have Luol Deng. That was one of their main pieces, yet they still pushed this Boston Celtics team to Game 7. And this showed that there was a lot to be excited about for the Chicago Bulls because even though they lost in 7 to the Boston Celtics, this was a young team with a lot of potential and they showed that they can rise to the moment and execute in the highest stage possible. So there was a lot to be excited for, Chicago Bulls fans. And in Derrick Rose's second season, he went from strength to strength. He went from averaging 16.8 points per game to averaging 20.8 points per game on better efficiency. He still stayed around 6 assists, but this season was a very memorable season for Derrick Rose because this was the first year that he was announced as an all-star, and rightly so, because everything that we saw in terms of the explosiveness, the speed, the athleticism, it was just enhanced this season and he just became a more complete basketball player. And in terms of memorable moments this season, he scored 37 points against the Washington Wizards, which went to a double overtime game, and he also hit the game-winning layup in this game in the second overtime. everybody knows about the poster dunk on Goran Dragic. I mean, that was one of the most violent dunks we ever saw. And this was against the Phoenix Suns. And this is a viral moment. And it's still remembered by the fans and the NBA community to this day. That's how unbelievable that dunk was. And he also recorded his career high against the Boston Celtics in 2010, scored 39 points. So this season, it was a season to remember, and it also was a season of great progress from Derrick Rose. Derrick Rose was improving year by year, and in his second season as well, he was able to lead the Chicago Bulls to a playoff position. Obviously, the Chicago Bulls at this point, they're not a dominant regular season team. They're finishing in the 7th and the 8th seeds. They're just making the playoffs. But at the end of the day, if you make the playoffs, you always have a chance to win a championship. And ever since Derrick Rose has come to the city of Chicago, they have made the playoffs. Barely, but they have. But in the first round, they once again face another formidable opponent by the name of the Cleveland Cavaliers, who were led by LeBron James. And unfortunately, the Chicago Bulls lost this series 4-1. But with that being said, Derrick Rose played absolutely magnificently this series. He averaged 26.8 points per game, and he went head to head with a prime LeBron James, who was said to be one of the best, if not the best basketball player on the planet at that point. And even though the Chicago Bulls, they lost 4-1 in the first round, Derrick Rose is really showing at this point he is the real deal, and he's a superstar in the NBA. At this point of Derrick Rose's career, he's already a star. He's only 21 years of age. He's already made an All-Star appearance. He's already made it to the playoffs. He's already led the Chicago Bulls to playoff positions. He's done so much in his career. But the following 2010-11 season is where everything changed for Derrick Rose. Because the Chicago Bulls, that young core, finally matured, and that young core was able to take the Chicago Bulls to a 62-20 record in the Eastern Conference, and they finished with the number 1 seed in the East. And Derrick Rose, he was playing at a phenomenal all-time level, averaging around 25 points per game. And we saw the best version of Derrick Rose we've ever seen. The guy took the NBA by the storm. He captured every NBA fan's heart and imagination. He was playing at an all-timer level, and the Chicago Bulls once again got an all-time player, an all-time superstar to represent their city. And man, what Derrick Rose was doing at 6'2" was just absolutely outrageous. I mean, he instilled fear into his opponents. When he got downhill, everybody moved out the way. It was violent, it was dangerous, but it was so fun to watch. Due to the fact that the Chicago Bulls were the best team in the NBA due to that 62-20 record, and because of the fact that Derrick Rose had one of the greatest individual seasons ever from a guard, Derrick Rose was named as the most valuable player in the NBA. And he was the MVP of the 2010-11 season. And what a moment this was, because he was the youngest ever MVP. This was a historic moment for the city of Chicago, and a brand new superstar was there to represent the city. And this was such a historic season from the Chicago Bulls, led by the 22-year-old Derrick Rose. But the main question was whether this success was able to translate in the playoffs. Well, Derrick Rose definitely answered that question, because in the 2011 playoffs, in the first round against the Indiana Pacers, the Chicago Bulls gentlemen swept the Indiana Pacers 4-1, and Derrick Rose was dominant in this series, especially in game 1 and 2, where he dropped 39 and 36 points respectively. And for the first time in the Chicago Bulls Derrick Rose era, the Chicago Bulls were able to advance to the second round of the playoffs. After beating the Indiana Pacers, the Chicago Bulls and Derrick Rose, they faced the Atlanta Hawks. And the Atlanta Hawks, to be fair to them, offered a little bit more resistance, but it was the same story. The Chicago Bulls beat the Atlanta Hawks in 6. And during this playoff series, Derrick Rose dropped an absolute masterpiece of 44 points. And he once again dominated the Atlanta Hawks. And a funny story is where Jeff Teague, he recalls when he played Derrick Rose within this series, and he literally said there was nothing he can do to stop Derrick Rose. And Derrick Rose could have gone for 50. Because the Chicago Bulls already won the game so early, he just let go and finished with 44. That's how dominant Derrick Rose was in this series, and he really spared the Atlanta Hawks and Jeff Teague. That's how good Derrick Rose was. So once again, the Chicago Bulls won another playoff series, and now they're heading to the Eastern Conference Finals. The Chicago Bulls and Derrick Rose at this point have reached the 2011 Eastern Conference Finals, and D Rose, he met a familiar face by the name of LeBron James, but not at the Cleveland Cavaliers, at the Miami Heat. During the previous summer, LeBron James moved to the super team by the name of the Miami Heat, consisting of LeBron, Dwayne Wade, and Chris Bosh. And unfortunately, the Chicago Bulls lost in the Eastern Conference Finals 4-1 to LeBron James and the Miami Heat. And look, in terms of talent, the Miami Heat were superior compared to the Chicago Bulls. Maybe the regular season standings didn't say that, but every fan knew that the Miami Heat, they had a terrific team, and unfortunately they got gentlemen swept. With that being said though, Derrick Rose, he performed at an all-time level in the playoffs, averaging 27.8 points per game. And for Chicago, the future looked bright. Derrick Rose is 22 years old, and he's leading this team to Eastern Conference Finals. The future looks great for Chicago. The city were looking forward to the future because there's still so much more Derrick Rose can give at this point. He's only 22. He hasn't even hit his prime yet. He's still at the early stage of his career. So, yes, did it hurt losing in the Eastern Conference Finals? For sure. But there was still so much time for Derrick Rose and Chicago to get all the way and potentially win a championship. And now we entered the 2011-12 NBA season, and everybody would have thought that the Chicago Bulls would take the next step, that Derrick Rose will keep on improving. However, 2012 was a very weird season in the NBA because the NBA lockout season, so fewer games were played. And for Derrick Rose individually, this was a season that was plagued by injuries. And even though the Chicago Bulls were the number one team in the Eastern Conference this season, something very tragic happened in the playoffs because in game 1 of the 2012 playoffs in the first round against the Philadelphia 76ers, Derrick Rose tore his ACL. And this is a very unfortunate situation because the game was already out of hand. Chicago were already comfortably winning, yet Derrick Rose was still in the game. And this is the moment where he tore his ACL. And this is such a heartbreaking situation because this one moment right here changed the entire trajectory of Derrick Rose's career, and Derrick Rose tearing his ACL at this point has sidelined him for a prolonged period of time. Due to the ACL injury, Derrick Rose was sidelined for the 2012-13 season. However, in the 13-14 season, Derrick Rose did make his return. However, for a player who depended on speed, athleticism and power, the ACL injury really impacted his game. And look, Derrick Rose, for 3 seasons after he tore his ACL in Chicago, still played relatively well. He averaged around 15 to 18 points per game. However, it just wasn't the same Derrick Rose. It wasn't the MVP Derrick Rose. But if you just look at the numbers, he still played relatively well. But everybody knew that Derrick Rose as the MVP, as the superstar in the NBA, and this was a bit of a shock. And during his comeback as well, he suffered from meniscus tears in his knee as well, so he was still plagued by injuries and it still impacted his career. And we already established that post ACL Derrick Rose, he wasn't the same player. He still put up good numbers between the era of 2013 to 16. However, it wasn't good enough for him to be the first option. But in Chicago, another star was born, and his name was Jimmy Butler, who was really playing at an all-star level, averaging around 20 to 23 points per game during this 2013 to 16 era. And the Chicago Bulls, they started shifting their focus from Derrick Rose to Jimmy Butler as that number one option. So slowly but surely, Derrick Rose wasn't the cornerstone piece of the franchise no more, and that responsibility and role shifted to Jimmy Butler. And even though during the post-injury Derrick Rose era, the Chicago Bulls, they didn't make too much noise in the playoffs. They were unable to make deep playoff runs. Derrick Rose was still able to produce a magical playoff moment. This was during the second round against the Cleveland Cavaliers. It was game 3. The game went right down to the wire. It was an inbound pass and Derrick Rose, hit a fadeaway three to hit the game winner as a buzzer beater. And this was one of the most iconic moments of the NBA at the time. And this moment is still talked about to this day. It was a very difficult shot to hit, and he hit it to perfection. It was a bank shot. I'm not sure if he called bank, but it went in, and it was just one of the most magical playoff moments of that series, of that season. And it was another iconic Derrick Rose moment for Chicago Bulls to marvel at. But as I previously mentioned, the new era led by Derrick Rose and Jimmy Butler, it didn't really get the Chicago Bulls anywhere in the playoffs. Yes, there were flashes of brilliant moments, right? They beat Milwaukee in the first round in 2015. They faced the Cleveland Cavaliers. They were competitive. They had a couple of playoff series win here and there, but the furthest they made it was to the second round. And in 2016, it was a very underwhelming season for the Chicago Bulls. So at that point, the front office, they realized that they needed to pivot to a new direction, and they wanted to get a lot more younger and athletic. And because of this, Derrick Rose, he was part of trade conversations, and there was a possibility that Derrick Rose was going to be traded in 2016. And this was the moment where Derrick Rose's tenure at the Chicago Bulls came to an end. He came to the Chicago Bulls at the year 2008, and now at 2016, he's just found out that he's been traded to the New York Knicks. And let's be real here, this was a very sad and emotional moment. Derrick Rose gave his heart and soul to the city of Chicago. He dragged this team to playoff positions. He gave the city hope again. And even though he suffered a devastating injury, he achieved so much in the city of Chicago, became the youngest MVP, led his team to deep playoff runs, became an all-star, became one of the superstars in the NBA. And for the city of Chicago, he fought through pain, he fought through injuries just to represent and play at the highest level. So this was a very emotional moment, not only for the city of Chicago, but for the entire NBA fan base. A guy who gave everything to a city just got traded in such a cold manner as well. But that was the business of the NBA, and Derrick Rose understood that. But now a new chapter began in Derrick Rose's career and life, because he's moved to a new NBA team by the name of the New York Knicks. And after leaving the Chicago Bulls, obviously Derrick Rose, he played for a multitude of teams. He played for the Knicks, he played for the Timberwolves, Pistons, Cleveland Cavaliers, and for the Knicks, he played some really good basketball. He averaged around 18 points per game, put up really solid numbers. For the Detroit Pistons, he played really good basketball as well. And also for the Minnesota Timberwolves, he averaged 18 points per game there as well, and also dropped that memorable 50-piece against the Utah Jazz. So even after his tenure after Chicago, Derrick Rose had a very successful NBA career, and people call him a biggest what if, or a label of that sort. But if you really look at his career in isolation after Chicago, he still had a very successful NBA career. He still put up good numbers, and he became an improved three-point shooter as well. And that shows the dedication, commitment that he had, and the humility. He understood, I'm not the same Derrick Rose anymore. I need to add to my game. And that's exactly what he did. So he still had a very good and respectable NBA career, even after suffering all those heartbreaking injuries, and even after being traded from his hometown. And you just have to commend and respect that, because not many players would have that mentality, that mental fortitude to come back from so many setbacks in their career and still play and perform at the highest level. So Derrick Rose, he's a true testament to what mental tenacity, what perseverance, and what resilience is, because a guy who faced that many setbacks in life and career, he did not give up. He still kept going, and he still managed to play at the highest level for a long time. So you just have to tip your hat to Derrick Rose. And the final team Derrick Rose played for in the NBA was the Memphis Grizzlies, before he announced his retirement on the 26th of September 2024. And what a career Derrick Rose has had at that point. He's done so much in the NBA. He lived out every single kid's dream, leading a city, becoming a superstar, an all-star, the youngest ever MVP. What an illustrious career it was, and he thought at this particular time it was the best moment and time for him to wrap up his career. And now that brings us to today, where all these legends, they're congratulating Derrick Rose on his jersey being retired. And look at some of the names on this video. I mean, you're going to see them, but Michael Jordan was congratulating him. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, LeBron James, Steph Curry, Anthony Davis, Devin Booker. All these guys are greats of the league today. And they're all congratulating him and they're all appreciating him because that's what Derrick Rose was. You know, a player to be appreciated, a player who brought so much to the city of Chicago, a Chicago native who lived every kid's dream to represent the city, play at the highest level in the NBA, became the youngest ever MVP. His play style captivated the NBA audience. Explosive, athletic. People were scared to face Derrick Rose on a nightly basis. That's how dangerous of a basketball player he was, and that's how formidable he was as a basketball player. He was respected by his peers and his opponents. He was respected by his teammates. And the whole city of Chicago, they adored him. And there's not many players in the history of the NBA who really captivated a city like Derrick Rose did. And his jersey is now up in the Raptors in the Chicago Bulls Stadium alongside greats such as Michael Jordan and Scottie Pippen, and rightly so. And I feel like the most fitting way to finish this video off is by showing the moment where Derrick Rose's jersey gets retired at the United Center. And this was such a beautiful moment. His whole family was there. His former teammates were there giving some great speeches. And I feel like this is a full circle moment for Derrick Rose. Because we know Derrick Rose achieved so much with the city of Chicago. We all know how much Derrick Rose means to the city of Chicago. As a Chicago native, he formed a connection with the city that nobody else really can in the history of the Chicago Bulls. Not even Michael Jordan. And look, we all know Derrick Rose, if it weren't for injuries, he would have achieved much greater heights. But I'm just so happy that his NBA journey slash career, it finally reaches a happy ending. I feel like this is a great conclusion. His jersey getting retired, being put up in the Raptors with the legends such as Michael Jordan and Scottie Pippen is the perfect way to finish your NBA journey. And what a career Derrick Rose has had. What an icon, what a legend he is. Now that brings us to the end of the video. Like, share, comment, subscribe. Peace.